Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we have a special guest. We're joined by Joeli Brearley, founder at Pregnant and Screwed. Joeli, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Well, first and foremost, before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
So I am the mother of 2 young children. I have 2 boys called Jack and Theo who are 5 and 3. And I am the founder of Pregnant and Screwed, which is initially it was a project that I set up in 2015 after I was sacked by my employer when I was 4 months pregnant. It was the day after I had informed them I was expecting. They sacked me by voicemail and by voicemail.
Wow.
And
I was already shocked, but then you just shocked me even more. So, yeah. Okay.
Left
wow.
a message on my voicemail saying, your contract has been rescinded. Please hand everything over immediately. And my employer was a children's charity.
No way. You couldn't even make that up.
No.
Oh my God.
Storm. And
wow.
Which just demonstrates how no sector, no company is immune from this. It's systemic. Pregnancy and maternity discrimination is an enormous problem. So after this happened to me, pardon me, and I obviously was in a state of shock for a while. I was 4 months pregnant, and then unemployed and had a mortgage to pay and was showing. So the idea of trying to get another job seemed just outrageous. There's no way that anybody would employ me when I was obviously pregnant. And I decided I wanted to do something about it. I employed a lawyer, and then I discovered I was having a high-risk pregnancy. The doctor said to me that I could go into labour at any point, and at 20 weeks the baby would have died. And they said, whatever you do, don't get stressed. Stress will likely trigger labour. So you have to, take it really, really easy. So, of course, taking a case to tribunal is possibly, along with divorce and moving house, one of the most stressful things you can ever do. So my partner begged me to drop the case, which I, of course, did. But as you only have 3 months less 1 day to raise a tribunal claim from the point that discrimination occurs, I couldn't wait until I'd had the baby, know that everything was okay, and then pick the case up later. Okay. So that was the first sort of red flag for me in terms of there being massive issues with access to justice. Then after I had the baby, I started going to parent groups, as you do, and chatting to other mums. Mm-hmm. And thought that I was the only person in the world this had happened to. That was just incredibly, horribly unlucky. And pretty much the majority of women that I spoke to and told them my story had a story to tell. Not necessarily as brutal as mine, but stories from being demoted, bullied, harassed, having pay cut, all sorts of things were happening. And I realised that, this really was a systemic issue. And it started to eat away at me that this had happened, that I hadn't been able to do anything about it, that all these other women were suffering similar injustice, and what impact that was having on women, and then on children and on families and on businesses, of course, as a result, and the economy. And nobody was talking about it. When it happened to me, I couldn't find anything, that this was going on. So I launched Pregnant and Screwed initially as a place for women to tell their stories anonymously, because the problem is most women can't talk publicly about this experience because they are branded a troublemaker if they do, or they sign a non-disclosure agreement, which gags them from speaking publicly. So I started this website and encouraged people to post. It took a while to get people to actually... I
can imagine. It's tough for someone to open up about that, right?
And even writing the story brings it all back, and it really does damage women mentally, this pregnancy and maternity discrimination. But then I was invited onto the Victoria Derbyshire show, and that then totally catapulted the campaign, and suddenly we were getting 6-7 stories a day, and now have 2,000 on the website. Then we launched a free legal advice line. I met a fantastic lawyer who said she would help me launch a legal advice line, because we're getting all these stories and women were saying, I don't know what to do. So I needed somewhere to signpost them to. So we launched a free legal advice line. Then we launched a mentor scheme to help women go to employment tribunal. So we were pairing up women who've been through an employment tribunal with a woman about to go through that process.
Oh, okay, great.
To act as a friend and support. The organisation had no income at this point, and I was working 4 days a week and had just had a second baby by this point.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, this sounds amazing, but how was you looking after number one for you at that moment in time, especially with the risk of that you mentioned it was related, plus the stress and everything else? How was you dealing with that at the same time?
Well, so I should say that the first baby was fine. He actually went 2 days over his due date.
He was like, no, I'm not coming out.
Yeah, he just stayed put, which is brilliant. So he was fine. And then I actually very quickly got pregnant with my second. Happy accident, shall we say. That's for another podcast. And then he came, and so after the initial incident and me losing my job, I did end up getting another job. Somebody employed me knowing I was pregnant, and they were brilliant.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely
brilliant. And I was working for them 3 days a week. I was also freelancing. I ended up having so much work, I had to employ somebody.
Oh, wow. Funny how it turned around, right?
Yeah, it worked out really well. I ended up becoming a published author. I went to Zimbabwe and did a project. So it worked out really well, actually, career-wise, but it didn't take away the pain
of course. No, not, yeah, I can only imagine.
I was working 4 days a week, had 2 children, was running pregnant and screwed, and I thought, I just can't keep doing all this. It's going to kill me. Something has to give. I can't give up the children. So
as I said to you before the show, I'm just about deal with one.
Yeah.
Right now. So the idea of taking on everything you just told me, right, plus 2 kids and a job, I salute you. I don't know how you do it.
They are very absorbing, aren't they, children? They do take up an enormous amount of your time. So I ended up giving up my job and deciding I had to make this work, because I couldn't give this up. It had become too important to me and the women I was helping. And I did a crowdfunder, raised £16,500, and that was my starting point to building this as a sustainable organisation that can help women. And since then, we've done all sorts of stuff. So 2 years ago, we did a big protest called March of the Mummies, which was probably one of the bravest things I think I've ever done. So we did it in 6 cities across the UK on Halloween, the 31st of October. We had 2,000 mums all dressed up as mummies, as in The Walking Dead.
Oh, wow. I need to get a video of that, or have you got some videos or photos? I'll have to add that in the video. That's amazing.
Obviously it's not very hard for mums to look like The Walking Dead, so there wasn't that much makeup required.
Like, we just turn up after a sleepless night, we'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly. And we were asking the government to make 5 changes to legislation that we believe will improve the lives of working mums in the UK. What
were those? So what were some of those changes?
So we want subsidised childcare, properly subsidised childcare, because we have the most expensive childcare system in the world.
Tell me about it. Mine's £1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, wow, it's like another mortgage. And the thing is, I'm relatively, on a high salary compared to the majority. So the fact that when I look at my brothers and sisters and friends and family, I'm like, I have no idea how you pay for your mortgage and childcare and have anything left to even put into savings or even survive. So yeah, that's an amazing one.
And the problem with the childcare system is you get 30 hours free, but not until they're free. So
I know, my brother just got that. He was like, thank God. Like, he messaged me the other day and was like, now she's Ariana, my brother Aaron's baby. She said, she's free. Yeah, I'll get the 30 hours free. I didn't really understand what he meant by that. And until he told me how much he was saving, I think he was saving like £500 extra. I was like, oh, wow, that is a lot. So yeah,
it's an enormous amount of money, and it means it's prohibitively expensive. So this is the problem. Lots of parents don't think about that, of course, when they first have a baby. It's not something that
we didn't. I'll be honest, we didn't.
No, you don't plan for that. And then you think about returning to work. You realise that actually you're perhaps going to just break even going to work, or it's going to cost you to go to work. The whole system is a problem. You have the childcare costs, and then we are also very passionate about paternity leave. So, of course, dads get 2 weeks
That
off.
seems crazy as well, right? I only took 2 weeks, even though I owned a company. I still only took 2 weeks, and I felt like that went in a blip. Like it felt like one day.
Yeah.
I was like, that's certainly not enough, not even remotely. And I felt so bad having to leave my wife after two weeks to go back to work. I was like, this is crazy.
And it's a really small percentage of dads that even take those 2 weeks off, because you
Really?
only paid £140. You're paid the same as statutory maternity pay. So you paid £140 a week. And some families just can't afford for the dad to drop.
It's not full pay for 2 weeks?
No, it's
really?
Yeah, statutory pay £140 a week. So
wow.
It's certainly not 100% of dads. I can't remember the percentage, but you'd be shocked at what percentage take those 2 weeks. So what we would like to see is fathers have access to 6 weeks paternity leave paid at 90% of salary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exactly the same as mothers, because that's what mothers have access to, statutory, but it's ring fenced. So it's yours. Nobody else can take it. And all of the research shows, if you look at other countries, that if you do that, you will vastly increase the number of dads taking time out to care for their kids. And again, all the research shows this is good for families. It's really beneficial for children. They do better in education. They have much higher well-being. The family has much higher well-being. Couples, when the dad spends at least 24 hours with the child in its first year of life without the mother, a couple is 40% more likely to stay together than if the dad doesn't. The benefits of paternity leave are enormous for our well-being.
What are the other areas that you mentioned that you campaigned for?
The other, flexible working.
Mm-hmm.
So we, for some reason, companies in the UK that don't seem to be getting on board with flexible working, despite the fact that there is now an enormous amount of research that shows that this is beneficial to businesses and productivity. And of course, this has an enormous impact on families. So lots of, particularly women, leave the workplace because they try and go back part-time because they want to be able to spend time with their new baby, and they want to be able to keep their job. Companies say no, and so they leave. I mean, that just is better for well-being again, for families, but it also means that women just aren't falling out of the workplace again like they are at the moment as soon as they have children. So we want companies to report on how many flexible working requests are made in their organisation and how many are granted. So it's transparent. That's all we want. Mm-hmm. We want transparency so people can see what's really going on. So the 3-month time limit that I talked about earlier, we want to see that extended to at least 6 months. So you have at least 6 months to raise a tribunal claim. And finally, our last demand was, we've now got another one, but at the time it was for the self-employed to have access to shared parental leave and pay, because if you're a self-employed father, you have no rights whatsoever. You have no money, no rights to time off. So this is...
Well, that's the same as me, right? I just had to take the hit.
Yeah.
I just had to take the hit because I'm the guy who also generates sales here. So I was just off and made no income during those months. I had savings, luckily, but it was very stressful a lot of time I wasn't present, sometimes mentally, with my wife, because I was thinking about, oh my God, where's the next paycheck coming from? I need to be at work. So it'd be great to have some support there too.
Yeah, of course. And what you have at the moment is, if you have both mother and the father are both self-employed, then the mother can access maternity pay, but she can't swap that with the dad. So mothers are having to give up their businesses. They've started a business or they're self-employed, and they're having to make a choice
because they're the only one that can do it and the dad can't. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
It doesn't cost the government anything to make.
It's just a change, a shift in. That's a very small change that they could make straight away, surely.
It's ridiculous. It's been through Parliament. We managed to, working with another campaigner, Tracy Brabin MP, took this as 10-minute rule bill. It got past the first stage, and then it got rejected at the second stage. And now our new campaign is about non-disclosure agreements being used in maternity discrimination cases. So, of course, lots of people will know about non-disclosure agreements from Harvey Weinstein, and then the recent case with a very prominent businessman. I don't think we're allowed still to say his name. He runs a very big retail organisation.
Okay. Yeah, I think everyone knows who you're on about. Yeah.
He was also using non-disclosure agreements to silence his staff, and cases of racism and sexual misconduct.
Why are people signing these? Are they pressured into do it? Are they they're saying, here's some money, sign this, and just don't say anything? Like what? It was, fear, just out of curiosity, what's the reason?
I can only talk in cases of pregnancy.
Yes, that's what I mean. Sorry, I'm talking specific about that. Yeah.
And the reason why people sign them is because they are bullied into doing
or misinformed. Yeah, bullied. Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive mixture. But what tends to happen is, for example, somebody will announce they're pregnant and they will be told they've lost their job, and they'll be shocked.
Isn't that illegal? Anyway,
totally illegal. Totally illegal.
Yeah, it's like,
access to justice is impossible, which I'll come on to after this, the reasons why. But yes, totally illegal. So they'll be told they've lost their job. When they're confused.
Are these in large companies too, by the way? Because I'm in shock that
make your eyes water with some of the stories I could tell you about companies that are household brands who win awards for their work with women and gender equality, and behind closed doors they are appalling, and they make women sign non-disclosure agreements to gag them and shut them up so they can't talk publicly about what is really happening. There are 3 different ways they use. The first one is, while they're completely shocked, they don't really know what's going on, they say, okay, tell you what, sign this non-disclosure agreement. We will pay you a small amount of money and we'll give you a good reference. Off you go. And they're confused and they don't really think they have another option.
They don't think there's another option, so they sign it. Yeah.
Then there's the companies that string it out, so they will get rid of you, and their tactic will be, let's try and wear them down as much as we can as they try and take legal action. So they'll just be brutal about it. They won't give information when it's needed. They will try and string it out to break them. So they wear them down until just before it goes to tribunal. So 2 days, a day before it goes to tribunal, they'll put an offer in, a really good offer.
Oh yeah, of course they do. That makes sense.
And then they say, but you have to sign this non-disclosure agreement as part of. Those 2 are probably the main 2 ways that they are used. But women have to sign them because you don't want to go to tribunal. No woman in her right mind wants to go to tribunal, because
that's the most horrible part about it. Of course you don't during that time. Yeah, of course you don't.
So you will take an offer if it's presented to you. And also you want a good reference. So they come with the bribery of, if you sign this, we will give you a good reference, so you'll be able to get another job.
Oh, thank you so much. It's like, I earn this anyway, like you're doing me a favor.
So you can't get rid of non-disclosure agreements entirely because they benefit the women. If you get rid of them, you leave them open, you leave them unsteady. They haven't got a way of not going to tribunal. What we want to see is non-disclosure agreements be monitored. So there be a body set up where women can report that they have signed a non-disclosure agreement and what the circumstances were and the company to that body. And that body sort of collects that information and has the jurisdiction to act and investigate should it feel that they are being misused in that company. We think that's a midway of dealing with the problem without completely getting rid of them. And I mean, it makes sense. Why? Because at the moment, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on, because they're the only people that know about non-disclosure agreements, the people that sign them, the employer and the lawyer. That's it. Need to be monitored. We need to be monitoring them.
What you have in place right now for anyone listening, or both for the HR leaders that are part of our listeners, also I'm sure many of them are mums, and some of them even may have faced this in their own organizations as well. What kind of resources do you have available now to help people and to help signpost them for help if needed?
So we've got the free legal advice line, which operates during working hours during the week, and you can also email that advice line. Everybody gets a call back, which is great because there are other advice lines, but they're so busy they just can't get to everybody.
Yeah.
We have a flexible working helpline. So for parents returning to work who want to get flexible working from their employer but don't know how to go about it, we have a line that you can call and they'll tell you how to make a official flexible working request or a non-official flexible working request, and also give you some of the arguments to use to your employer about why they should accept this.
Amazing. Where are those lines available? How do we find those lines?
So the phone numbers are on our website and also on our social media page.
Okay, so I can direct everyone to your website and they'll be able to find that.
Then we have the mentor scheme where we help support people to go to tribunal. We run a festival, 2 festivals a year, one in London and one in Manchester, called Pregnant Then Screwed Live, which is
nice
for mums who have been pushed out or pushed to the edge by employers who are incapable of seeing how brilliant they are. And it's about helping them figure out how to balance this conundrum of motherhood and work. How do I earn a crust and be a good mother?
Yeah.
And so we look at entrepreneurship, because so many women set up their own businesses when they have kids, because that gives you ultimate flexibility.
Yeah.
But there have been many successful businesses off the back of women being pushed out of their jobs. Then we look at flexible working, we look at confidence, because loads of women lose their confidence because they've been a victim of discrimination, and it can really crush them for a long time. We look at mental health, we look at relationships, all the things that are really bothering mums.
There's so much more, that's another thing as well I realized is the more, and even with my wife now, the mental, everyone thinks about the physical, we need this for the baby, we need that, etc., the physical items or whatever, but it's the mental challenges which I find that are the toughest about being a dad right now. Even obviously me and my wife have a very good dialogue. We speak every night about kind of how we're feeling and stuff like that. And for her, it's the mental struggle, the stress of sometimes she feels alone because she's so isolated. All her friends are at work, for example, or am I being a good mum, etc. And stuff like that. But you don't think about that when you plan to have a baby. You don't think about those challenges. You think about, have we got this ready? Have we got the room ready? Have we got the bottles? Have we got the sterilizer? Have we got all the things? But you don't realize how the impact mentally that it has on people as well. And I realize there's not much support for mums out there. And luckily for us, we're part of a sort of NCT sort of parenting group that we realize how powerful that is now. So my wife's out of the day, she's out of the house 3 days a week. She's walking in the park every Wednesday and has a sort of tummy time sort of meetups and all those things, and luckily she has that. But I feel like there's so much more that can be done.
That community is
it's amazing,
invaluable. And often you meet people on your NCT course who aren't the sort of people you would have been friends with otherwise.
No, that's true.
So close.
We spent New Year's together. We had like 20 mums and dads and a New Year's at one of their houses, because none of us are going out for New Year's. Let's all just sit in with our screaming babies and watch the fireworks on the news, on the TV. Sorry. So, but it was a fun night. It was great.
That sharing of information is just crucial, I think, to your sanity.
It really is.
So I have a great community around here, and it's things like how to get them into schools we talk about, and practicalities of what you're feeding them, and development stages and all things like that just keep you together, don't they? But lots of people don't talk about the impact it has on your relationship, and it's enormous.
Going back to our listeners, our listeners, as I mentioned to you before, they're senior HR directors from leading global businesses. So how can they better help women in these situations?
It's really not that difficult. All they need to do is be aware that when parents return, if they've been away for a while, it's going to take them a little bit of time to get back into the groove. And they're going to feel vulnerable. They have done a day's work before they get to the office with wiping bottoms, putting clothes on, packing bags, getting them to nursery. They've probably cried 3 times before they've got there. And they're, if they're still breastfeeding, they're still, they go off and do that during the day. And that is really taxing physically and mentally. So just to be really aware that they're not going to hit the ground running when they walk through the door, that you will need to support them, that perhaps it would be great to pair them up with somebody else in the organisation who's been through that, who is a colleague, not somebody that's superior to them, somebody they can totally trust to talk to about how they're feeling. But if you do that really well, they will become an invaluable member of your team, because they will be so grateful that you've done that for them, and that they are able to be a mum and to have a job. Because I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I needed to work after I had a baby. Working made me a better mum, and being a mum made me better at my job. I would go into work and I could have a hot cup of tea, and I didn't have a child attached to me, and I was stimulated in an entirely different way. You know, I could achieve goals and do all these brilliant work projects, and then I could go back and be a mum. And I needed the break from both of those things.
Yeah. That's kind of what my wife's been talking to me about as well, is that she really does want to return to work. She's really excited about returning to work. She can't wait actually to return to work. But she does she wants it to be at her choice. But companies do have to give some time to adjust to that.
You know, I really truly believe, and again, there is research that backs this up, that if you look after parents at that point in their life,
they'll stay with you.
They will stay with you, and you will reap the benefits. So that's the crucial period. Implicit bias is a massive problem. 30% of employers say they avoid hiring women of childbearing age because they see pregnancy and maternity as a burden to their business. So we know that implicit bias happens at the recruiting phase, and women are deemed, mothers are seen as less competent and less committed than other types of employees by, you know, a huge number of people in organisations. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to address it in organisations so that women are able to progress and are able to be recruited and are respected for their talents and skills, and not just seen as, oh, she's had a baby, she's going to be distracted, she's going to be pretty useless for a while, let's just, you know, ignore her.
Well, the good news is, I know you mentioned about the UK, and I can tell you from someone who speaks to HR leaders every single day in UK HR leaders, it is changing. It's changed a lot in the last few years in terms of flexible working. We've come a long, long way, even in the last few years. And by no means are we there. And still so many organizations now don't have that, which is crazy, because it just shows that you don't trust your employees. If you don't trust them, then it shouldn't be your employees in the first place.
And if you give them that trust, then they're going to work when they're actually productive. They're not going to sit in an office and look at Facebook, are they? Which is what lots of employees, let's be honest, are doing. I did when I was forced to sit at a desk for 9 hours a day. I would spend, you know, a big chunk of my time diddling around on social media. So give them that trust, and they will work much more productively. But also what we need to address is, if you give somebody flexible working, don't then decide that they can't be promoted. Don't then think that they're not able to do bigger jobs, because you can't stagnate somebody's career just because they're doing 3 days rather than 5. They are still probably, you know, for those working 4 days, they do 5 days, really, the majority of people. They're just paid less. So let's start investing in flexible working. Job shares are a great solution if flexible working isn't an option. Job shares are 30% more productive than a single person doing that job. There's some absolutely fantastic, brilliant case studies of job shares. So, yeah, I mean, let's just start really valuing and implementing flexible working across the board.
Well, one of the things that I'm interested that you're going to be doing soon, right, which I wanted to share with everyone listening, is that, you know, we're talking about this unconscious bias that exists in the workplace, or even conscious, to be honest, in some cases, is that companies aren't prepared. They're not training their managers and, you know, directors and leaders to deal with this, or even be aware of it, right? Because of those unconscious bias training. If I look at the unconscious bias training that's going on at the moment, this is not included in that. You know, you have unconscious unconscious bias in all the different other areas, but this isn't included in that training, and that's something that you guys are going to be focusing on very soon. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we are working with a couple of brilliant trainers who also do unconscious bias training with race, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
They do look at gender, and we're creating some very specific workshops and training programs that are directed around the implicit bias towards mothers.
That's what I'm excited about. Yeah, because I don't see that. I speak to thousands of people every day, and no one's doing this. So all the time. So I'm like really happy that you're doing this, and I'm sure for everyone listening, they need to work with Joeli and the team and bring them into your companies. I think this would be so valuable.
And people don't realise that, of course, the whole thing about implicit bias is it's unconscious.
Of course. Yeah. But you have to provide that. You have to expose people to this. And your stories, just your stories that you shared with me today, have opened my mind and my eyes. I didn't realize that this is on this scale. But you don't, because we don't talk about it.
No.
And that's what's incredible about what you're doing, is you're providing a platform for mums and dads to talk about it. And that's the first step.
Yeah, exactly. Exposing the problem. You can only fix it when you know what the problem is.
Yeah.
And so these are all the things that make up the gender pay gap. You know, you've got unconscious bias. That's a massive problem.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the fact that women are dropping out of the workplace after they've had babies because they're not being supported. Flexible working that they can't secure. Mm-hmm. So they have to make a choice between their child and their job. And then, you know, the things that the government needs to fix, like childcare and paternity leave. These are all the things that make up the reason why we have a gender pay gap. It is motherhood that causes the gender pay gap. Companies need to do something about it, but the government also needs to address it. And the gender pay gap is a productivity gap. That's what it is. It's about the UK having really slow productivity, and that if we can make everybody as productive as possible, i.e. women, and make our workforce work for working women, then we will see our economy improve by an unbelievable amount. There's also lots of research about diversity at board level. So McKinsey did a report into this, and they said the least diverse companies in both gender and ethnic terms are 29% more likely to be less profitable. So by addressing your gender issues, again, the research is showing you that you are going to be more profitable, and it's motherhood where you're losing your women. That's where you're losing your female leaders.
How can we help you? You know, where can? I didn't even ask you earlier. How are you currently supporting yourself and the organisation financially? Like, where's the funding coming from?
Well, it's been difficult. It's piecemeals. We are a community interest company, so I've secured bits of funding here and there from trusts and foundations. We did a big contract with the Equality and Human Rights Commission last year, where we worked with the Equality and Human Rights Commission and Andy Burnham on a project to make Greater Manchester the first city to eliminate pregnancy and maternity discrimination. And that was a paid contract, so we got some money in from that. We have donations from women who we support. It's bits and bobs here and there, but we are about to launch a training program.
Yeah, which I'm really excited about.
Gendering change. And we're working with various trainers who we've got to know over the last 4 years, who look at these different areas that we think make up this problem and ways that companies can improve. And it will be, rather than big interventions in organisations, it's more kind of bite-sized half days or day workshops with, say, 20 of your employees to look at these different aspects. So what are your legal obligations? Because lots of companies don't know what their legal obligations are, because it's complicated. It is actually very complicated. How do you implement flexible working and job shares, and why should you bother? That return to work phase, how do you make a really smooth transition for parents coming back to work and ensure that you're looking after them so that they become really effective employees? What's the final one? It's gone out of my head. Oh, implicit bias. Looking at all phases of women and mothers working through an organisation, so from recruitment through to promotion and progression, to ensure that we don't see mothers as less distracted and less committed as other types of employees, and so that we don't see women who are of childbearing age as potentially a future problem.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I'm really excited about it. And where apart from the website is pregnantandscrewed.com.
Yeah.
Right. So we can find you out there. And you said Instagram is also a big following on there. So what's your Instagram?
Instagram is at pregnant_then_screwed. And we post, I post on there almost every day about the issues and challenges of pregnancy and maternity discrimination, but also kind of family and work.
Amazing. And the helpline's on the website,
Yeah.
right, for everyone?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then the workshops will also be available on the website soon. Yeah.
Soon. Yes.
Soon. Woo. Fantastic. Well, look, guys, as always, if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find the show notes for the episode, everything that we've been talking about, the links to everything we're talking about, the phone number, everything will be linked in the description for all of you. And what's the best way to get in contact with you directly? Do you have an email as well, or
yeah, Joeli, which is a funny one, Joeli.
I nearly got that wrong earlier. I'm ashamed to say.
It's the unique spelling at pregnantthanscrewed.com.
Amazing. Before we go, Joeli, if there's one sort of parting piece of advice you could give to the leaders and the companies that are listening right now on if there's one thing they can do straight away to help mums, what would that be?
My advice would be, think about that point where they return to work and just have an open conversation with them. Don't shy away from those difficult conversations, which is what lots of employees do. They feel uncomfortable about it. They don't think they know
it. Yeah.
You know, somebody says they're pregnant. Oh, well, I don't know enough about that, so I'll shy away from it and I won't have a conversation with them. You'll be amazed what you can achieve by just sitting someone down and saying, how do you feel? Are you all right? Do you need any help with anything? Can I make this better for you in any way? And the results will be fantastic just from that really simple change that you can make.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you again for joining us, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
You too. Thanks, Chris.